On Tuesday, 25th May 1624, Dunfermline was ravaged by what became known as the Great Fire. Although this was a major event in the city, it failed to be mentioned in the borough records, although was mentioned in other borough records. The fire was not deliberate, caused by some burning wadding or tow from a fired gun. This had fallen on the heather-clad or thatched roof of a house near the Rotten Row, and the fire had taken hold quickly, spreading rapidly to other houses. In the end, 3/4 of the town was destroyed. That 25th May was Wappingshaw Day in Dunfermline, a day when military drills were carried out. One of those taking part was Baillie John Anderson's son, and he was blamed as being the one who fired the gun that caused so much devastation. A public notice was issued on 16th June about the fire to the King, James VI. In the notice, the fire was described as a most lamentable and fearful accident. The sudden and terrible fire had burned for 4 hours, as no foresight nor strength of man was able to resist it. The poor inhabitants could do nothing to stop it, and could only look on as it spread from building to building. The document states 11 score of tenements and 14 score and 7 families lived in the area and were burned, with all the houses and barns of the town, where there was 500 balls of victual, 16 scores of bairns, of which the eldest wasn't past 6 years old, was totally ruined and undone. Those affected were described as having been industrious, virtuous, and had carefully and painfully laboured for a living, but were now reduced to the extreme point of misery, as all they had left were the clothes on their backs, as their houses were nothing more than a pile of rubble and ashes. Members of the Privy Council visited a few days after the fire to see for themselves the extent of the damage. That Tuesday, William Anderson was out shooting with friends in a particular area of Dunfermline. Accompanying him was his servant, Charles Richardson. A shot was fired, although whether by Anderson or Richardson remains unclear, and a piece of the lint set the thatch of a roof on fire, as it was easily ignited. The day was windy, and this allowed the fire to spread quickly. It jumped from house to house, although occasionally jumped over a house, leaving it completely unscathed. The abbey and the kirk weren't affected by it either, leading to speculation there had been some divine intervention, while others saw the fire as some kind of witchcraft. According to this report, 9/10 of the housing was burned and destroyed. According to Balfour's Annals of Scotland, and in the Aberdeen records, there had been 220 houses in Dunfermline, with 287 families residing in them. There were 1,600 inhabitants, of which 700 were communicants, and there had been 320 children under the age of 6. In another account by Calderwood, in his History of the Kirk of Scotland, he stated that Dunfermline had burned on 25th May. A young boy in Dunfermline shooting a gun, a little piece of the lint, flieth upon the thatched roof, which easily kindled. The fire increased with the violence of the wind, which was very vehement. The wind was coming from the northwest. He continued, the fire began at 12 hours, in other words midday, and burnt the whole town. Some few sclat houses excepted before 4 afternoon. It had raged for 4 hours. He went on, goods and gear within houses, malt and victual in the malt kilns and barns, were consumed with fire. The fire concentrated in the area principally north of the High Street and included Collier Row, Bruce Street, the Rotten Row, West Queen Anne Street, North Chapel Street, the Cross Wynd, all the north and part of the south side of the High Street, the upper part of New Row, and the north side of Maygate. The houses on the south side of the High Street were only partially destroyed. With the wind being so strong, it carried flames and sparks across the High Street. The under parts of the houses, or foundations, were generally built of stone, with the story or stories above built chiefly of timber. 3/4 of them were thatched with straw, heather, or in some cases turf. All of this combined led to the fire quickly taking hold and destroying the properties within such a short space of time. Dunfermline called for help. Letters were sent to every town and parish in the country asking for financial donations. In Aberdeen, 1,600 merks was collected by voluntary contributions as the town's benevolence, which was paid to a commissioner appointed to receive it and passed on to the Dunfermline authorities. Edinburgh also appointed commissioners to collect the voluntary contributions to help the townsfolk. This was done by Alexander Clark, the provost, Mungo MacColl and Peter Somerville, both bailies, and others in the capital. £4,500, 8 shillings and 7 pennies was raised in Edinburgh. The money was paid to Robert Drummond and James Reid, the burgesses of Dunfermline. Perth donated 60 merks, and it's believed every parish donated. The grand total, however, was never recorded. A legend sprung up about the fire. Around a week beforehand, a regiment of rats was seen making their way up the Rotten Row. This was later seen as their foresight about the coming fire, and the narrow street was named after them. However, the Ratton Row, or Rotten Row as it became, had been named as early as 1487 due to the unwrought timber of the houses built there. Following the fire, those who could afford to do so began rebuilding and repairing their homes and businesses, but in the main, the people had to wait for the money collected throughout the country to arrive before they could begin rebuilding works. By the second half of the year, the sound of the mallet, hammer and saw were heard in every quarter of the town. At this time, the burgesses had the right to cut timber from the estate at Garvock, so trees were felled in great number, leaving the wood with only a few trees once they were done. The ground floors of the new buildings were built of stone, while the upper stories were constructed of timber. Many of the wealthier inhabitants commemorated the fire when their houses were rebuilt. On walls, above doors and on lintels, 1624 was etched in the stone, but most have been lost due to redevelopment. A house at the east side of the High Street on its north side near the East Port was the most easterly house damaged in the fire. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.